Hey guys, this is Chris Fayte with Cheat the Game coming back at you. Today we're going to be taking a look at just going over some core basics. And reason being, we got a lot of new people coming in, and we love having new people coming in that's hungry to learn, that wants to learn, and we're always happy to help in that regard. However, they're coming in here asking some questions in regards to some very complicated type hacking. Now, most of the time, and they're coming in there asking about how to hack an online game. Well, we don't get into that here. We just teach you basic game hacking with offline games to get you familiar with assembly code, and that way you can progress into a different computer language if you wish, and just to get the core basics down. But you have to learn some basic assembly. You also need to understand what's going on in a code, how values are being calculated, because every game's different. But you got to have some basic script writing experience also. It's basically, and I've said this about a million times, and I'm sure people that follows me is probably tired of this analogy, but it's the best one I know. It's like walking into a calculus class and say, okay, teach me calculus, I want to learn it. But you haven't went through the basic math of learning how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. That concept, you have no clue what that is. There's no way you could ever grasp calculus without learning the very basics of math. You can't go do advanced math without knowing the basics of math. And it's the same thing with game hacking or computer programming or anything of that nature. You have to understand the basics before you can go into more complex things. So, you know, even helping you and showing you how to do something in that regard, if you don't have a core basic understanding, you're never going to understand what anybody's trying to show you. So, and that's what we kind of want to go over. And I'm probably going to do this for the next little bit of series of tuts coming out. And what we're going to do, something very basic, is we're going to go through the cheat engine tutorial. This time we're going to go through the 64-bit all the way. We're going to do step 2 to step 9, and we're just going to go over and we're going to write scripts for every single step. That way when we bring up the tutorial, all we got to do is turn our scripts on and we can just go on to the next lesson. And we're going to do these scripts multiple different ways. One will be a very basic way, another will be like an intermediate way, another will be a more advanced way. That way you gotta get all three flavors in there. So when we hit the more advanced things, don't feel like you're being left out or anything like that. It's just the build up that you want to get to. And I will supply all the information you need, all the reading material you need, all the videos that you would need to learn these things, where it's taught step by step. But like I say, once you get these core basics down, then you can start building on from that. And that's what we're going to be doing, is building on until we get to our the video tuts that are basically on my channel. My channel starts when you have the core basics understood. If you don't have the core basics understood, my vids are probably going to be useless to you. You can probably pick it up here and there, but it's really not going to make 100% sense to you since you don't understand the core basics. So that's what we're going over. Okay, one of the first things you do if you're brand new is I need you to come over to this cheatengine.org page that I will have the link for in the description. And you can come over here, and it is a tutorial by Samurai 25404, a very in-depth tutorial on auto assembler. Now you can also find a lot of this information in the help tab by byte. Just go to Cheat Engine Help, and it'll carry you to the wiki links page, and you have very in-depth tutorials. And also I thought he had just a regular thing. He must have took it out, I don't know. This is the 6.8.1, but anyway, you can come over to the wiki as well, and there's just about everything you can think of in regards to that. But what I want you to do is come over here. Now, Samurai 25404 wrote a very in-depth about auto assembler. It's very well done. He keeps your interest up. I mean, it's really, really good, and I suggest you really go read it. Read the entire thing. It's not very long, and he really gives a basic push of what these registries are, what they do, and how you can use them. And it's really good stuff. It goes over a few basic commands in auto assembly to get you started, and what other different things do. I would really recommend that you go read this. This will give you a good foundation start about what we're going to be doing right now. And I would really recommend you go read that first and then come back to this tutorial, and then you'll have a better grasp of what I'm talking about. And that way I don't have to go into all this stuff like EAX, EBX, and all that stuff, because here it is right here. Very great stuff. He did a great job. So go check that out. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the Cheat Engine tutorial. Also, if you don't have Cheat Engine, I'll leave the download link. I'm going to be using the 6.8.1. That's the newest one out at the current time this video is being made. So you can actually go download it at cheatengine.org/downloads. Download it, install it. Make sure that you untick anything other than Cheat Engine when you install it, so it doesn't put other stuff onto your system. But it's a safe download, and you can follow along with the Cheat Engine tutorial as we go through it. Okay, so you got Cheat Engine downloaded, installed, and go ahead and bring it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to click over here on the help, and we're going to go here to Cheat Engine tutorial 64-bit right here. Just click on it, and this is the tutorial. Now the step one is just read what everything is all about. And basically what this tutorial is, just gets you familiar with the usage of Cheat Engine, things like that. Common things that you probably be doing a lot of. Some things you may not do quite as much. But it kind of gives you a rundown and kind of teaches you a little bit of what's going on, basically. So before I do anything, I like to set up a few key things in Cheat Engine before I attach to the process to make sure that everything is the way I want it. First thing I do is I change my debugger to VEH. My default will be on Windows debugger. I'm going to change mine to VEH because a lot of games today VEH debugger seems to work better on. So I use VEH. Also, you can set your hotkeys over here. Now the hotkeys I use the most are for increased value, decreased value, changed and unchanged. Now I've just installed 6.8.1 myself, so I have not set my hotkeys, so I'm going to do so now. And for increased, I just use the home key. So I come up here and I just mash. I like using the home key. For decreased value, I like using the N key. And for changed value, I like using the plus sign. And for unchanged, I like using the minus sign, and that's over on the keypad. And those are the common things that I use the most, and those are the only four I use. A lot of times I will put a pause the selected process, like on a non-obscure button, but it just depends on what the game is doing. If I want to pause the game, usually for timer values, things like that, where you cannot pause the game, usually that's a good idea to do that. That way you can still pause the game and find your timer values a lot easier. But I usually just wait and set that when I'm in a particular game itself, so I'm not going to set it now because I don't need it. Alright, so we got everything set up, and we're going to go ahead and attach to the current process, which is the Cheat Engine tutorial. So go ahead and click open. I'm not going to load my associated table. And we're going to go ahead over to the next step, which is called step 2. It's actually the first thing you're going to do. Now you can go through and read this if you want to, and he gives a little bit of tips and things like that. But basically what the challenge is we need to find a health value. We know what that value is, and to pass the scenario we need to set it to 1000. We're going to hang on this particular step just for this tut, and we're going to do it several different ways, and we're going to write a script for it. That way when we bring it up again, we never have to look for it again, ever, as long as we don't update the version. Okay? And like I say, the next steps and everything will be in the next lessons. But once we go over step 2, we won't have to spend as long on the next steps, because I'll have discussed most of everything in this step that I want to discuss. Okay? The first thing we need to do, and the most basic thing that you need to do, is we want to find the value. So our very first thing we do is we want to find the health value. Now I like to set up some things over here as well. I always put this on this writable box on readable and writable by selecting it and putting the little box into it. That makes the scan search for readable and writable areas. You'll definitely need that if you ever search for an AOB or an AOB array of bytes, something like that. You'll need it to search both readable and writable. That's just a personal preference of mine. I like using it better. So, all right. So we're going to find an exact value. Now, usually a health value, in my experience through games, is usually on a float value. That's usually where you're going to find it. But for this example, it's just trying to get you familiar with Cheat Engine, and it will be on a 4 byte. So we're just going to leave it on a value type of 4 byte. Scan type exact value. We're going to do a first scan. And it brings up everything that has a value in that particular module of 100. So we're going to mash hit me. It goes down to 95. You can see one change down here, but let's pretend like we don't see it. We have no clue, and we can either say decreased value, or we can just put in the exact value of 95. And we are just left with one address. Now this is what's known as a dynamic address. You see it's in black. A dynamic address will change if you take the game down, bring it back up. It won't be this address anymore. It could be a different address. A green address is called a static address, which will always be the same. You can Google up static and dynamic addresses. If you wish to learn more about that, feel free. Google's always at your disposal. All right. So to pass the scenario, all we have to do is put this to 1000. And you see the little next button appear. And we pass the scenario. But we want to take it a step further. Let's say we want to write a script for this instead, to where we don't have to search for it again. Okay, and we want to be able to have that next button pop up, and we can just go on to the next step. And that's the goal that you're getting to when you're game hacking, is you want to be able to write scripts for them. That scripts are what you need to put in trainers if you decide to make a trainer, things like that. Also, if you want to get into other computer languages, you're going to have to understand the basics of script writing. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an AOB script and see if we can get that to come on anytime we want. So I'm going to close that down because I want to gray out that next button again. I'm going to bring it back up, go back over to it, reattach it to the game. And this is also good because I want you to see what we were talking about earlier about dynamic addresses. So we're just going to redo the scan. It just went down to 99 this time. That looks to be it right there. And it is. And if you take a look, the address has changed. Totally different address. So that means that each time you bring the game up, you're going to have to do this little scan process over and over. And believe me, games nowadays, you could be value scanning a long time. Some of these values are very hard to find. Sometimes they're easy. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is put a debugger on the address. We want to see what is writing. There's an opcode somewhere in memory that is writing that value every time we take a hit. And it's changing our value. We want to find that. So to do that, we right click on it. And you have these two options down here. We'll discuss what accesses in just a moment, but right now we are just looking for what's writing to the address. So we're going to click on that, click yes, and it brings up our debugger right here. And as you see, nothing's writing to it at the moment. Nothing's currently going on. So obviously it's only going to write to it when we actually take damage. So let's take some more damage. Remember what our health is at 99. So we mash hit me, and it goes down to 96, so it subtracted 3 from our health, 99 to 96. Well, that's good information because we can use that information to find out what's going on with what's writing. So it locates the opcode of what's writing to this address. An opcode is an instruction. Now, an instruction is basically telling the computer to do something, or the cheat engine to do something. And basically what it is, it has what it wants you to do, what we want it to do, and it has what's being affecting and what's affecting it. So this is the command. It's wanting it to subtract. If you see RBX or any registry plus an offset in between brackets, that will be your address. That's our health address right here. in between the brackets, and we'll break that up in just a second. In between the brackets means we don't really want the address, we're wanting the value of that address, which is 96. So it's saying subtract whatever's in EDX from 96. Always remember, and you'll see this a lot, you always see a comma, argument on the left and the right, and whatever's on the right side of the comma will always affect what is on the left hand side of the comma. And what's determined how it's affected is by the command that's given. You'll have a series of commands, and if you read that page, you'll see move, subtract, add, or whatever, or compare, whatever. Okay, and we'll get into that stuff later. But right now, it's telling it, I want you to subtract whatever's in the EDX from the value of my health. That's what it's saying right here. And we can look in these registries by clicking on it, and Cheat Engine gives us some information on what's going on. Here's the code structure that it's in right here, a little snippet of it, which we're going to. We can see RBX would be our base address. Our base address, consider it like a starting point. Say there's all kind of character values like health, stamina, or breath underwater, or whatever that's associated. They're all associated together. Usually programmers put those top things in one specific structure together. They keep health, stamina, or anything that's a physical attribute like that together. And then in another section of memory they may put like the player's coordinates, how fast he can move or how high he can jump, in another structure. Well, usually that all stems from a base address. When we call a base address, basically you can think of it as a starting point, the very beginning of that structure where all those values are located. Okay, an offset is the distance away from that base address. That's how far it is in bytes, in hex, away from that base address. So if we take the base address, which you can see is right here, 112.0.990, which is in hex, by the way. If you add 790 hex to this value, you will get this address, which is our health address. Let me get rid of this one because I keep mashing the button, not meaning to. You'll get this, which is our health address. What is at that health address is our actual value of our health that's being stored there, and it's just being stored there, and registries are coming and taking that value and manipulating it and re-putting it back to the address. Okay, that's basically what's happening. So if we can see, remember we had 99 when we started this with the debugger, and it subtracted 3. And if you take a look in EDX right here, now RDX is the 64-bit version of EDX, which is the 32-bit version. It's still the same registry. Okay, just because it says RDX and EDX, it's still the same registry. This is just the 64-bit, which handles more bytes. Okay, that's all that really means. But if you look, take a look, what is it holding? It's holding 3. That's how much was subtracted from our health. And knowing that information, now we have enough information where we can go manipulate this however we want to. So I'm going to mash stop, and we're going to go over to show in disassembler, and we're going to affect this address. And what we want to do, what's the scenario? We need it to write 1,000 to this address. We need it to write 1,000. That's what passes the scenario, and our next button comes available. So let's do that. What we're going to do is we're going to write just a simple little AOB scan, and I'll go over AOB scans at a later time, or this vid will just be way too long. But for now, we're just concentrating on the opcode. The next lesson, we're going to go over everything about this AOB scan, okay? But for right now, this is the address we want to place a jump on. Here's the address right here of the opcode. Okay, now we can name that address something, which is the very first byte. We can name it whatever we want. I'm just going to call it step 2A. You can call it whatever you want. I'm calling it step 2A because we're going to be making more scripts in just a minute. Okay, so what it does, it's going to now do an AOB scan, and it's scanning for a unique array of bytes. As you can see, it's just our opcode right here. Alright, The bytes here are nothing but this instruction in byte form. The bytes are what the computer is actually reading. All this over here is just an interpretation of what the bytes are, just so we humans can read it and understand what's actually going on. Okay, but the computer is actually reading these bytes. Okay, but like I said, we're going to discuss this later. I don't want to get too involved with it right now. Darkbyte has programmed in templates in AutoAssemble, and we use a template that's already in the system that he's already wrote out for us. Saved us a lot of work we have to do. We use an AOB injection because it's going to look for a unique pattern in this particular module. That's for the reason for the AOB scan module. And what is the module? The module is the program that we're currently attached to. Okay, or it's what is holding the value. Now there's other modules that could be involved, but we'll get into that later also. But for right now, it's just basically in this particular module, and there is no other byte pattern in that whole module that has all those bytes in that order. That's what that means. So when it finds it, it says, okay, I found the spot that has all these bytes in that order, and that's the only one, and it names that first byte step 2A. Okay? Alright. We'll get into that later in more depth. Right now, it's allocating memory. That means it's looking for a place somewhere in memory that isn't being used by anything else, and it's going to be roughly close to this module right here, in this module's memory, that is not being used by anything. There's nothing there. So it's going to find a spot. It's going to allocate about 1,000 bytes for us, and it's going to allow us to put our cheat there. And that's what it's doing. And we're calling that allocated memory new mem. Okay, that's what we're calling that allocated area. So now, if we go turn this code on, when we assign it to the current cheat table, which I'm going to do now, we assign it to the current cheat table. We haven't really modified it in any way. Let me put step 2A. If we turn this on, that's now going to, instead of actually subtracting whatever is in EDX from our health, it's going to put a jump here. And when the game gets to it, it's going to tell the game to jump to allocated memory and run the cheat instead. And that's what it's there for. If you see that jump FFF000, it's telling the game to jump to the allocated memory where our cheat's going to be. If we follow it, we can see right here that this is where that opcode now is. It's going to run the opcode, it's going to jump back. Okay, so let's go back. Let's turn our script off and let's modify it. Let me save what I got so far and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so now we're going to write our script, and we're going to make our address always have 1,000 when we turn this on. Basically, the way we do that, we got to modify what's being written to our address, and we can do it several ways. First off, we need to get rid of the sub, and the command we really want to use is move, M-O-V, which is short for move. Basically, it's just going to copy whatever this value is into this address and replace the value. That's what it's going to do. So we can do it one of two ways. We can just totally take out EDX and just put in a pound sign and 1,000, which that is just a symbol. That means integer 1,000, a decimal integer 1,000. Or we could do it this way. We can put parentheses int 1,000. Or you can do it another way. You can find out what the hex value of 1,000 is, which is 3E8. And this is going to be important in just a minute when I do the intermediate level. And you can just do it as its hex value. You don't need to put anything in front of it. 3E8. And we're going to leave it at its hex value. There's another way you can do this. EDX, put EDX back here, and you can just manipulate what EDX is bringing to it. Right above it, we put move. Remember, whatever's on the left is going to be affected by whatever's on the right. We just move 3E8 into EDX, and then EDX will move that value into our health. So all those ways are going to do the exact same thing. Okay, it's going to move 1,000 into our health address. Let's press OK. Let's go back to our scenario here. You see the next is grayed out, and we're going to turn on our script. I'm going to show you. Turn it on. It puts the jump to allocated memory. Let's follow it, and now we can see, if you take a look, here's our cheat that we modified now. It's moving 3E8, which is hex 1000. You can see that in the comment, into EDX. EDX is going to move that into our health address, which is this right here. But remember, nothing is accessing it all the time, so it's only being accessed when we mash or take some damage. So we actually have to take some damage for it to go into effect. So we'll do that. And take a look. It moved 1000 into our health address, and now our next scan is available. Okay, we're back. And now I just want to do a quick intermediate way. So if you're brand new to Cheat Engine and you get lost here, do not feel bad. We'll be discussing this in more detail later, okay? So don't worry if you get a little lost here, but you may pick it up anyway, so just keep listening. Alright? But what I'm trying to iterate here, there is more than one way to achieve the same type of results that you want to happen. You don't necessarily have to manipulate this value to get the next button to appear. Let's get back over to it. There could be other things. We can find out what's going on in the program, and this is where understanding assembly will help you bring out new ways you can try to get different things that you want. So let's go back and refine the value, or refine the address. Okay, real quick. 97, there it is right there. We'll just make sure. And let's bring that down. Now the address completely changed again, so we're going to get rid of the old address. Now remember, last time we were just finding what's writing to the address. I want to close that down. This time I want to see what's accessing it, and this is everything that is accessing this address, and I want to bring it up into memory, or in the debugger, I'm sorry. And right off the bat, I want you to take a look. There's an opcode that's watching our health address. It's doing a compare. It's constantly comparing, and really take a look at what it's comparing. 3E8. Well, that value looks really familiar, don't it? Remember what 3E8 was? That's the 1000. Why would it be monitoring our address for that value of 1000? Because that's what is the goal, to make the next button appear so we can continue on with the game, or with the tutorial. So we take some hits, we can see everything that's happening to this value, or this address, when we took a hit. Here's where it's subtracted, here's doing something else, here's making another comparison, possibly to see if we failed or not, and made it all the way to 0, or it does something else. But this is very interesting, that it's comparing 3E8, which is hex for 1000, to our health value. So let's go take a look at it. And if you notice, this is constantly being accessed, where these are only being accessed when we actually take damage. So this is constantly being monitored. That address is constantly being watched for this value. So what's happening if it reaches that value? With a compare, there's always a condition, a conditional jump. And if you look, JNE, that means jump if not equal. If this address does not have 1000 in it, I want you to jump over everything that's going on here. Well, what's going on here? It's just going to return. So nothing is really happening. Only something happens when it reaches 1000, right? Well, what's the one thing that really happens when we reach 1000? Take a look at the next button. What would happen if we take that condition out? Remember, it's constantly being accessed. If we take that condition out, we do that by right-clicking, and we replace with code that does nothing, and that knocks it out. It's called no operation. It turns these 2 bytes to 90, which is byte code for no operation. and it'll place 2 knots there. Now I want you to take a look at the next when I do that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put that on and take a look at the next button. We did nothing with this address. We just took out the condition of the compare and made it run this particular function that it was jumping over. So it's always going to run this regardless of what this value is, right? We just took out the conditional jump. Now it's always running it. So to have the same effect of the next button appearing without changing that to 1000, all we have to do is knock out that conditional jump. So why don't we just do that? Seems a little easier, don't it? And we can do that with what's called a direct byte manipulation. We do it basically the same way, we just don't allocate memory. We're not going to have the computer go jump off somewhere else to run a cheat and then jump back. We're just going to knock out those 2 bytes. So let's do an AOB injection. And we're just going to call that step 2 underscore bypass. And I don't usually name it this long, but this is for tutorial purposes, okay? Step 2 bypass. We're actually bypassing, having to change that to 1000 is basically what it's doing. So we don't need to allocate memory. We're not going to have it jump off somewhere else. We don't need these label codes because we don't have a new mem anymore, so we don't need to label anything. We're just going to do it directly and get rid of return. What we do want our register symbol, because that's what the name of that first byte is always going to be in our AOB scan. Like I say, we'll go over that later if you don't understand it. So what we're going to do is put a define byte, which is DB. It just defines a byte. We're going to define new bytes for these right here. We want to define new bytes. We can take out the rest of this because we're only going to be manipulating those 2 bytes. Take out the deallocation, and we're just going to leave it like that. So we're going to change those 2 bytes to something else, and we're changing those to 90. 90 always and forever will be a no operation. Okay, memorize that. You got it made in this scenario. Okay, so what it does when I turn this on, it's going to do this array of byte scan. It's going to see that there's no other bytes in this sequence, in this section of memory, and it finds it, and then it starts at this byte and says, okay, what do you want me to do? Well, at this address, which is this byte right here, which is at an address as you see here, I want you to change that byte to 90 and the one next to it to 90. These 2 bytes I want you to change to 90. So it says, okay, I'll do that. Now when I turn this code back off, I want you to change them back to these 2 bytes, 7538, which is the original bytes. Okay, that's all that's happening here. So if we go back, I know the next button's already on. I'm going to call this step 2B. And I'll put it out beside that bypass. So we're bypassing having to do anything. I'll tell you what, and that's what the scripts are for, so we can just bring it back up. I'm just going to close this down so we can gray that back out, okay? Alright, so we go back over to it. Now next is grayed back out. Look at back to the game, or attach it back to the game, and there we go. Now whole new game's up. We can close out the debugger. Now the address is completely changed. It's no longer holding 100, so it's at a different address. We no longer have to scan for the address. All we need to do now is either we can turn on this one or we can turn on this one. If we turn on this one, we're going to have to take a hit. It'll change that to 1000 and we can move on. However, what will happen if we turn on our bypass? Well, let me bring this down here and we'll look and see. So let me bring it over here so you can see it better. So what happens when we turn this on? I'm going to see if I can get a better close-up of it. Let me scrunch that down just a little bit, just so we can kind of bring it closer together. And we're going to turn on our cheat and take a look. Take a look at the next button. Didn't do anything. Health is still the same, and guess what? We just moved on to step 3. So there's more than one way you can do things to get the desired results, and we're going to discuss that later in the next coming vids. Okay, I want to thank all my partners and donators for helping out with Cheat the Game. Also, I want to give a couple of recognition to some supporters. This is Enthusiast channel, has a lot of good videos in regards to gaming and different things, so please go check him out. Very good channel. I've checked it out myself. He's on a steady growth, and he's stated that he's coming out with some new stuff very soon, so go check him out. And also, I got over here, we got Face. A friend of his is a big time supporter, and you can see right now he's got a live stream going on, got 1.5k subscribers, does a lot of Roblox and other type vids. Very good stuff. Go check him out. And he is a CTG supporter as well, and go tell him that Chris Fayte from Cheat the Game said hello. Alright, but thank you to all my partners and all my donators over at the Patreon and PayPal. I can't begin to tell you how much it helps me out, helps the group out, it allows the videos to keep coming out, and I really appreciate it. I wanted to go ahead and get some basics out that I can send people to. We're getting new people all the time, and it's really hard. They just don't understand the core basics, and I really wanted something to go over the core basics in the newer cheat engine that's out right now, and just wanted something to send people to. So I appreciate all you advanced people bearing with me through the next few videos. I really do appreciate your support and coming out and supporting me and everything. This is just so we can help answer questions a little better. I'm giving them something I can send them to that they can watch and help them grasp and get a hold of the core basics. That way they can understand better what we're talking about when we're trying to help them. So that's basically why this series is coming about. So if you advanced users can bear with me a few more videos, we'll get back into the meat of game hacking very, very soon. So I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for everything that you do. I can't tell you how much your support means to me. It just means the world, and I could not do this without any one of you. Thank you so much. Guys, I got to run. You all take care. Keep on hacking. Most importantly, please enjoy yourself. That's really what it's all about. You cheat the game, fellas, because believe me, it doesn't mind cheating you. I'll see you on the next one.